the nature of your emergency?
Welcome back to the Tactical Living Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Wilton, joined by Sergeant Wilton. How are you?
I'm good.
If you're a first responder, chances are that you have struggled with something called functional disassociation. And I thought that we could talk about this coping mechanism today because it's something that a lot of people don't understand that they're experiencing. Nonetheless, how they can actually kind of make their way through it in a healthy way. And there's a survival skill that a lot of first responders rely on. It's called emotional shutdown. And this actually has a hidden cost that carries very long after the shift ends. So I thought that we can kind of go over that a little bit today.
Yeah, I think over time you start, you had to, especially at work, you start having to disassociate from your emotions. And, it's one thing. And I just want to touch on this, but I see this, especially with this younger generation of cops coming through, is they don't disassociate their anger or upset. And, contempt of cop is one of the biggest things that we deal with nowadays. And they know how to disassociate all other emotions, but not when it comes to their anger or upset. And I think we transition that into our home lives as well.
Yeah, shutting down feelings can keep you super focused and decisive, even more effective, I think, in crisis. But when emotional suppression becomes your default, then it might have a very difficult time being able to stay contained to just the job.
Yeah, and I think, for our Ben Stein comes to mind. He always says that Bueller, that nondescript, very monotone kind of mindset of this is who we are emotionally. When you are that way at work all the time, you shouldn't turn off your emotional response, but you should know how to control it in such a way to where you know what emotion to turn on in that moment. I'm not saying turn on crying in an instant. I'm saying is being able to show that physical and emotional response out in the field, but then transitioning to when you're at home, you can still keep your emotions intact.
Yeah, a functional dissociation is a coping mechanism basically where emotions are compartmentalized in order for you to be able to still maintain your performance under stress. So as we're talking about this, I think the easiest way for me is to metaphorically think about little boxes as I'm going through kind of describing different emotions and different real life elements to this. And in first responder work, I think it could look like things like staying super calm during trauma, right? We see that, and you can either be in awe or you can be the one that's kind of in the zone of things.
Yeah, and I think it's funny to, especially over my years and experience that I've, been a police officer and seeing everyone's emotional responses to different situations, to where I've been at scenes where to me, I'm just like, okay, cool. Let's get it done. But then you see the officers responding. Their eyes are big. They're all over the place. And you're seeing that physiological response to it. They're so amped up. They're responding in such a way to where they haven't learned that calmness in the crazy per se, and they don't know how to have that emotional response yet. That Disney movie that's talks about emotions, and it has all those that control center of all these different cartoon characters in your brain controlling those responses, whether it's anger, upset, fear, whatever it may be. And you want to be able to be in control of all of those.
Yeah, if we grab another one of those boxes in first responder work, I think it can also look like taking one of those boxes and inside of it putting delaying emotional response indefinitely, because we see that happen all the time.
Yeah, I think we push off our emotions on such a regular basis because it's okay, it's go we're at this call first, now you got to go to another call, and you're never able to turn on or off your emotions, or you're just delaying and deferring that emotional response until a time where those boxes are so checked, they're just ingrained in it and you can't change it.
Yeah, totally. Or you might have handling it later. That tends to be something that just simply never comes. And I think too, some people prioritize the task over the feeling.
Yeah, I think when you're prioritizing the task over the feeling is you're changing your emotions to something to where like you're changing your chemical makeup when it comes to an emotional response towards things, and you're not able to healthily respond to things on the back end. You're never wanting to address them because you keep shutting down. And so I think it transverses into your home life if you keep shutting down your emotional responses all the time. And when you come home, you have no emotion, you have no sincerity to what your actions are.
Yeah, I think there are some signs that we can take a look at when it comes to emotional shutdown becoming your default. And maybe all of us have experienced some of these before. And I think the first one could be that you feel super flat instead of relieved after your calls. You have no reaction because it feels safer than feeling anything.
Yeah, I think when we feel that flat line that comes out of it, you're just going through the maneuvers of being a human being and being able to respond. We're not robots. And that's the biggest thing I think that we need to recognize. We're not robots, and no one can ever expect us to be robots, to not have an emotional response towards anything.
Something else that I've seen is that some people struggle to name what they're actually feeling, and emotions register as being tired or annoyed or numb even. Yeah,
I think when we don't register those as emotional responses, and we start, there's so many different emotions. When you think of emotions, you think of anger, you think of crying, those are the ones that you think of, but you don't think of the non-emotional response as being an emotional response as well.
That was cute. You think of crying for sad.
Yeah.
I'm going back to like different colors. I'm picturing that movie you were talking about. I've never seen it. I've just seen like little pieces of it. And I think too that a lot of people avoid conversations that actually require that vulnerability because feelings feel inefficient or even uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think when it becomes our normal to start having emotions and to start having the emotional response towards things, when that becomes the abnormal feeling, you need to kind of start diagnosing, okay, what's going wrong here?
I'm thinking about somebody telling me about their wife, and this is definitely something that he's expressed to me, to where they're present but they're not emotionally available. So a lot of the times, one great cue is if your family says that you're distant or that you're closed off.
Yeah, when you start building up those barriers and protecting yourself, like our bodies and our minds are crazy things to be able to build up those barriers, to draw up the police line tapes to say, do not cross this. And so ultimately we're standing on the outside of those emotions, those responses, just watching it from the outside in instead of actually crossing over to cut that line to be able to address that stuff.
Constant pain is not normal. I don't care if it's a headache or tension in your shoulders or you're having sleep issues. If you have any of these things on a regular basis and there's not a previous injury related to it, then I think it's important to understand that stress shows up physically instead of emotionally for a lot of people. I did not notice how much of this my body was storing until I no longer worked under somebody else.
Yeah, and I think that we start correlating those pains, those not sleeping goods, those whatever it may be, as, oh, I just must have slept wrong last night, I must have did this, and could it be that? Yeah, absolutely. But when it's consistent and it's in the same spot over and over again, I think that's where we have to recognize, okay, what is actually going on here?
We can lift the lid on some of those boxes to be able to reopen emotion without losing control. And I think one of the first and most important things is to just differentiate suppression from regulation. So regulation allows feeling without the overwhelm, and then suppression just blocks that feeling out entirely.
And that's exactly when we suppress that stuff all the time. It's us standing outside the police tape, watching it from a distance and just saying, oh, well, I'm kind of glad that's not happened to me, even though you're in your own mental mindset of that.
A lot of the times we think that creating a safe container for being able to process things means that we always have to talk it out to somebody. I am one that does not use that as my main go-to. For me, I utilize other strategies that are either somatic or a little bit more like metaphor. I'm very creative, so I like to have a lot of fun with things in my mind, whether I'm taking that issue or that incident, and I am pretending like I'm seeing it down there in the target range, right? Or even something as simple as every time that I blow out a candle, I could be thinking about the other things that I'm kind of ridding myself of. I'm not one to like go burn sage and things like that. However, for me, it could be something more like taking that thing and then writing it down on a piece of scratch paper and tossing it into the fireplace. Like that is what works for me to be able to create that safe container for processing. But for some people, it could be peer support. We have our police, fire, military, and families Facebook group, which I know a lot of people get some great benefits out of. Of course, you can have faith-based conversations, just somewhere to be able to give emotions a place to land.
Yeah, you want to find that outlet, that source that works for you. And it's so important to find that, because just because it works for somebody else doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you.
I hope you've gotten some value out of today's episode. If you have, do us a favor, drop a review, subscribe down below. And as always, know that I'm sending you a long, tight hug from my home to yours.